Good afternoon and welcome to Jersey City Public Schools, March 22nd, 2023 Professional Development Afternoon. Our Inclusion Professional Development is brought to you by the Special Education Department. Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Jerry Cristanino, Supervisor, Ms. Megan Costigan, Lead Teacher, and your presenter, Danielle Dima. But first, check in with yourself.
The 5-4-3-2-1 method is a grounding exercise that can help you stay in the moment and avoid negative thinking and worry. You can do this exercise anywhere, at home, at school, in the car, or even in the middle of a crowd. You can do it sitting, standing, or laying down. Counting down from 5, use your senses to list things around you. Make an effort to notice details about these things. This is how to do it. Start by breathing deeply in through your nose and out through your mouth. Then slowly look at your surroundings. Find 5 things that you can see around you. Maybe you see a colorful poster on the wall, the spider web on the bookshelf, the lamp on the nightstand with the red shade, the cat sleeping peacefully on the chair, the cactus on the dresser that has finally bloomed. Then list 4 things that you can touch: the warm mug in your hands, the soft comforter on the bed, the denim of your jeans, the scratchy carpet under your feet. Next, listen for 3 things you can hear. Maybe the ticking of a clock, the quiet hum of your computer, the sound of traffic from outside. Now try to find 2 things that you can smell: the tea in your mug, the clean scent of your clothes. Finally, list 1 emotion that you feel. This is a way to ground yourself so you can feel present in the moment and in control of your surroundings. Now you try. Use this method when you feel overwhelmed to bring yourself back to the present moment.
I hope that video centered you and made your day a little easier. Now back to our inclusion professional development. What is inclusion? Inclusive education is when all students, regardless of any challenges they may have, are placed in age-appropriate general education classes to receive high-quality instruction, interventions, and supports that enable them to meet success in the core curriculum. Requirements in the law. IDEA reauthorization in Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 require that individuals with disabilities are to receive a free and appropriate public education, which must occur in the least restrictive environment, LRE, with supplementary aids and services when necessary. Increase inclusion opportunities in Jersey City public schools. A goal of the Special Education Department is to increase inclusion opportunities and place students into their least restrictive environments. The New Jersey Tiered System of Support, NJTSS, and the Jersey City Public Schools Tiered System of Support should be used as a guide for placing students on the correct and appropriate interventions, thus ensuring they are in their least restrictive environment. Atmosphere in an inclusion classroom. All students feel accepted and gain a sense of belonging. Prevalent belief that all students can learn and succeed. Modeled values of fairness, empathy, acceptance, kindness, respect, and responsibility to and for other people. Student improvement is valued and success for each individual is celebrated. Stereotypical comments and inappropriate behaviors are challenged. A friendly reminder on why this profession chose you. Be the person you needed when you were a child. Environment and an inclusion classroom. Provided text, resources, and learning materials in the classroom reflect academic ability. Classroom routines that are sensitive to the individual needs and cultural norms of students are established. Give all students opportunities to display their best work. Teaching practices. Instruction is differentiated based on the different stages that students have reached in the reading process and their individual progress. Technology is provided for additional visual, oral, physical supports for students who need them. Instructional strategies reflect diverse learning styles. Strong links are made to students' prior knowledge and interests. Students are grouped in ways that are sensitive to students' varying comfort levels with group interaction. Home and school tasks are equitable. Inclusion 2.0 with Shelley Moore. This is an informative video from a famous inclusion advocate.
Welcome to 5 More Minutes, useful videos in 5 minutes or less that support the teaching and learning of all students. I'm your host, Shelley Moore. Today's topic is Inclusion 2.0. Okay, friends, you remember the evolution of inclusion? Did you think it was finished? Oh, no. Let me tell you, because we have only just begun. We are in the middle of another evolution. Now, if you remember, inclusion aims to include kids with disabilities into our classrooms by emphasizing how these placements can be meaningful and purposeful. This is still very much a goal, but there's a big tension that is still making this inclusive shift difficult for many students, teachers, and schools. You see, many of these classrooms are still operating in a standardized curricular model, where the goal is to teach to the green. In this approach, teaching is aimed to reach the majority of students through one average approach, the green way, and then we try and do something different for students who need more support, but often it's after the fact. This retrofit approach makes the workload of teachers very high, especially when there could very easily be more than just one student who needs this type of accommodation to the curriculum. And I get it, making individual education plans for multiple students takes a lot of time and resources. So it makes perfect sense that as teachers, we would advocate for our workload by trying to reduce or limit the number of students who need this individualization. But what has ended up happening is that it's put teachers in a very awkward position trying to advocate for both inclusion and manageable workloads, and it's putting kids right in the middle of this debate. But is there another way that we could look at inclusion to better handle and understand this dilemma? I had a grad student tell me once, she said, "Shelley, the problem with all of these conceptual diagrams is that the one thing that they have in common is the assumption that the majority of our kids are already green. But that's just no longer the case." And she's totally right. You don't need me to tell you that our classrooms are getting more diverse, not less. We are realizing that it's not just kids with disabilities who are different or need more support. We are running out of funding, resources, supports, and people to continue to operate in this standardized retrofit model of curriculum. So there are two ways we can try and respond to this dilemma. We could continue to try and manipulate the classroom composition, which just doesn't make sense. Or we might consider that maybe the goal of classroom composition is to no longer be homogeneous. This is Inclusion 2.0, teaching to diversity. The goal is not about including a couple kids who are different, but instead it's teaching to the difference. It is a beautiful way of being able to respond to all of our kids in classrooms where difference is no longer a burden of workload, but instead it's a celebration of strength. Now, we haven't always been able to make this shift. It is only recently that our curricular model has allowed for this kind of responsivity and flexibility. In British Columbia and many places in the world, we are shifting away from standardization and towards a standards-based curriculum. In this type of model, all students fall on a continuum of growth rather than being compared to an average or a single marker of proficiency. It is a shift to be celebrated. Free yourself the burden of standardization, British Columbia! I have a vision of non-standardization world domination. Spread the word. Tell your friends. So there you have it, my friends. The evolution of inclusion love has led us to teaching to diversity. The most important thing to remember, though, is that teaching diversity is not more work, but it is different work. Which leads to my question and call to action for you. Advocating for resources, funding, and inclusive supports is still a critical part of this journey, but looking at inclusion in this new way might start changing our conversations a bit about how to better support teachers and students in these diverse classrooms. So if you are in charge of ensuring the most support for the most diversity, what would this look like for you in your classroom, school, district, or even community? Don't forget to take a look at the website to check out supplemental resources, readings, and research for this episode. See you next time!
Thank you, Shelley Moore. So look for items in an inclusion classroom. 2 or more professionals working together in the same physical space. Class environment demonstrates parity and collaboration. Both names on the board, sharing materials, and sharing space. Both teachers begin and end class together and remain in the room the entire time. During instruction, both teachers assist with students and with and without disabilities. The class moves smoothly with evidence of co-planning and communication between co-teachers. Differentiated content and strategies based on formative assessments are used to meet the range of learning needs. More look-fors in an inclusion classroom. Technology to include assistive technology is used to enhance accessibility and learning. A variety of instructional approaches, co-teaching approaches are used, including student grouping and regrouping. Both teachers engage in appropriate behavior management strategies as needed and are consistent in their approach to behavior management. It is difficult to tell the special education teacher from the general education teacher. It is difficult to tell students with special needs from the general education students. Parity, parity, parity. How do you and your co-teacher partner convey to students that your teaching relationship is truly collaborative, that it is a partnership based on parity? The following checklist might help you to think through ideas about how you, your co-teacher partner, and students can observe parity or its absence. Note, do keep in mind that which of the following parity signals pertain to your situation depends on many factors. Take a few minutes to discuss with your co-teacher. All students feel accepted and gain a sense of belonging. Prevailing belief that all students can learn and succeed. Modeled values of fairness, empathy, acceptance, kindness, respect, and responsibility to and for other people. Atmosphere of respect from the school community is present. Student improvement is valued and success for each individual is celebrated. Stereotypical comments and inappropriate behaviors are challenged. I will give you about 3 minutes to discuss this with your co-teacher. Okay, another few minutes to discuss with your co-teacher. Classroom routines that are sensitive to the individual needs and cultural norms of students are established. Classroom responsibilities are inclusive, gender balanced, and not stereotyped. Give all students opportunities to display their best work. Diversity is valued and celebrated in the community. Use of storytelling, games, and performing arts engage students and their families in the enjoyment of learning together. I'll give you another 3 minutes to review this checklist with your co-teacher. And our last items on our checklist, technology is provided for additional visual, oral, and/or physical supports for students who need them. Instructional strategies reflect diverse learning styles. Strong links are made to students' prior knowledge and their interests. Instruction is differentiated based on the different stages that students have reached in the reading process and their individual progress. I'll give you your last 3 minutes to discuss this with your co-teacher. Okay, co-teaching approaches. We have team teaching, parallel teaching, station teaching, one teach, one assist. Team teaching, both teachers are often in the front of the classroom, sharing the responsibilities of lead instruction with equally active but possibly different roles in a lesson. This approach can enhance teacher creativity, encourage collaboration, and energize students. This strategy should be used occasionally, as more subtle student needs can be missed when grouping is not being used. Parallel teaching. Co-teachers divide the class in half and instruct them on the same material. Groups don't rotate. Parallel teaching allows the co-teachers to maximize participation and minimize behavior problems. This approach reduces the student-teacher ratio and increases instructional intensity. Co-teachers will need to be organized and cognizant of timing and pacing when using this strategy. Station teaching. Co-teachers divide their class into small groups to provide instruction at separate stations. Activities should be designed to function independently of each other and require approximately the same amount of time, with student groups rotating stations. This approach reduces the student-teacher ratio, increasing student participation and effective monitoring of students. One teach, one assist. One teacher acts as the primary teacher while the other assists and supports the learners. The co-teacher assists by monitoring student work, addressing behavior issues, answering student questions, distributing materials, or asking the lead teacher to clarify any developing student misconceptions. Co-teaching is a marriage. This is a visual representation of a inclusion classroom.
Hands up if you agree. Let's give Juan Carlos 3 snaps. We'll count 3. 1, 2, 3.
It's a mutual respect that we have for each other. She respects that I'm an educator. I'm not just somebody who's in there to service some children who have IEPs or 504s.
Hi, gentlemen, can we put our markers and boards somewhere else?
I think of her as my right hand, and myself being her right hand, the two of us really helping each other through lessons and making sure that we can get to all of the kids. And that's one of the key components of the co-teaching, is reaching all learners as fast as possible and not letting things go.
You need to say there are kids. It's not my classroom. Dawn always says our homeroom, our kids, well, we are doing this. And that makes the special educator feel more welcome.
What is nonfiction? What is nonfiction? And this is done like
I feel like it's a really good model for kids to see their teachers who they look to for a role model. How are you communicating? Oh, okay, well they're disagreeing with that. How are they working that out?
Sarah and I, we actually went to college together.
And we had a couple of classes together. I think we were together for one semester.
And she showed up here at Norwood, and her and I were both like, I know you.
I saw her in the hallway, and I was actually really nervous. I was like, did she like me in college? Is she going to give me a good recommendation? And then, and she seemed really excited to see me.
And from that moment on, we just became friends in the building, and you know, we can sit down and talk about kids, talk about life. And I think that it does help when you have that relationship with a co-teacher to start off at the basics, understanding where each other come from, understanding each other's lives and what's going on in your life.
You're not on an island. You have a partner, and you have to understand it's like your relationship with your spouse. You have got to talk about the uncomfortable things.
yellow folks, you need, hold up, listen first. Listen, always listen first.
And I know that the co-teaching model also says that it is like a marriage. You go through the stages where you're dating at first. Yeah, Sarah and I, we knew each other before, but now it's a new relationship because I've never taught with her before. She had never taught with me. So now we're like in that dating phase where I'm trying to figure out, okay, well how do you want to do this? Oh, okay, well, I would rather do it like this, and going back and forth, and her saying, oh yeah, it's an awesome idea. And then we get into like the engagement where it's all exciting and we're feeling like, wow, this is working great. I love it. I think we should continue in this relationship. And then getting to that final marriage where you are going to run into problems, but it's okay because the two of you have each other. And that's what it's all about.
Teaching is a marriage. Common planning time. Communication is key. Do not take anything personal. Learn to coexist. There is no my students or your students. A visitor or student should not be able to tell the difference between the general education teacher or the special education teacher. Accommodations. An accommodation can be made for any student, not just students with a 504 plan or an IEP. An accommodation does not alter what the student is expected to learn. An accommodation makes learning accessible to the student and allows the students to demonstrate what they know. Accommodations are alterations in the way tasks are presented that allow students with a disability to complete the same assignments as other students. Accommodations do not alter the content of assignments, give students an unfair advantage, or in the case of assessments, change what a test measures. Accommodations are basically physical or environmental changes, generally referred to as good teaching strategies. Extended time, frequent breaks, varying activities. Change in classroom, seating, physical arrangements of the room, reducing and minimizing distractions, cooling off period. Emphasize various teaching approaches: visual, auditory, multisensory, individual or small group, demonstrating, modeling, visual cues, use of manipulatives, free teaching, graphic organizers, directions given in small sequential steps. Modifications. Modifications are generally made for students with significant cognitive or physical disabilities. A modification does alter content knowledge expectations as well as assessment administration practices. A modification is a change in the course of study, standards, test prep, location, timing, scheduling, expectations, student response, and/or other attributes which provide access for a student with a disability to participate in a course, standard, or test. It does fundamentally alter or lower the standard or expectation of the course, standard, or test. Modifications are used in the classroom to meet the needs of every student's strength. Modifications involve lowering the level of materials presented. Presentation of curriculum is modified using specialized curriculum, which is written at a lower level of understanding. Materials are adapted, texts are simplified by modifying the content areas, simplifying vocabulary, concepts, and principles. Grading is subject to different standards than general education based on IEP goals. Assignments are changed using lower level reading levels. Testing adaptations are used, such as lowering the reading level of the test. Co-planning instructional decision-making exercises. Choose one or two of the following planning scenarios for Ms. Salt and Ms. Pepper. The class is beginning a unit of study on identifying theme in literature. What model of co-teaching should Ms. Salt and Ms. Pepper use to introduce the unit? Explain your reasoning with your co-teacher. During class, two students have difficulty following directions and getting assignments recorded in their agenda. Which model would help Ms. Salt and Ms. Pepper best stay on pace with their lesson objectives while providing support to those students who need assistance staying on task? Explain your reasoning with your co-teacher. Students will understand the science experiment better if they can get closer, see better, and are able to talk more informally about what is going on in the experiment. Both groups are doing the same activity with no modifications. What co-teaching model would be most effective? Explain your reasoning with your co-teacher. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to go over this co-planning instructional decision-making exercise with your co-teacher. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, by the famous Nelson Mandela. And lastly, an inspirational video about how to be a Mr. Jensen.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me though was when I was about 10 years old and I was in school and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, "Hey, stop tapping." A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, "Clint, you have to stop tapping." It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, "Okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands." And so I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, he looked at me and he yelled. And he said, "Clint, stay after class." And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me, and I will never forget it. And so I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. And he walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, "Clint, come here. I want to talk to you." And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, "Now, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you." And he said, "Have you ever thought about playing the drums?" And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer." And from that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, and played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me. And he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
Many thanks. Information brought to you by the Jersey City Special Education Department, and a brief synopsis from the NJIETA Systematic Change Weekly Professional Learning Communities on Inclusion. Any questions or concerns, please contact me at ddema@jcboe.org. Please email me for your PD certificate for this professional development, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and week. See you all soon.